PvP. PvP. Why are you guys doing this? You know, there's other things. There's lots of other things to do. Why are you doing this? And the answer is relatively simple. We would not be doing this if we needed to build support for PvP from the ground up. The reason we're doing this is because back a year and a half ago, whatever, somewhere around there, we announced we were doing a new testing format, and we were calling it 247. We decided with that format to introduce a PvE and a PvP version for testing. So we did the majority of our heavy lifting, the majority of the building out of the PvP system, like all the different rules and aspects of it, you know, all that stuff back then. There's a lot of people that are interested in PvP. There's a lot of people that are interested in PvP specifically in the context of this kind of game, and that's a really important thing for people to understand. You know, you got close to it with things like WoW back before Battlegrounds were introduced, where you had your kind of open world skirmishing and, you know, your whole South Shore versus Hillsbrad kind of back and forth thing. You got to taste little bits of it like that, but that's kind of what it's like for the whole world to be in that same place. You know, everything is contested. There's opportunities every step of the way for guild and player negotiation and communication, and it's just a different beast. Over time, we also plan on introducing additional types of PvP servers, probably once we get closer to launch, that are more curated. That, you know, whether it's, you know, our version of RVR, meaning like faction versus faction, with things like, you know, alignment groups, like good versus neutral versus evil, that kind of thing. You know, our whole survival extraction kind of experience that we had created back for the 247 testing, I think is a fantastic way for us to explore PvP in our game. Those are all coming. But for now, this is what we're offering. Again, you have this kind of unprecedented level of sovereignty on the server. We are treating it as a Wild West uncurated server. You know, anything out that's not, you know, breaking our TOS, or, you know, anything that is not, you know, actually harassing other players, or, you know, the things that we've outlined that are like, hey, these are like hard rules. Everything else goes. There is no playing nice here required. That is kind of the overview. Let's get in to the details. Number one, level of engagement. There is a plus and minus 5 level of engagement. So you can attack and PvP somebody that is 5 levels above you or 5 levels below you. Outside of that, they are treated as an invalid target. Next, PvP combat does not enable for you until you reach level 5. So you are safe from PvP until you reach level 5. Number 2, your items that you have equipped on your character cannot be looted off of you. Anything that you have in your general inventory that is not equipped can be looted off of you, except for bags themselves. And number 2, anything that is a no drop item. Player corpses will follow the same rules as PvE corpses, meaning after a period of time, if a player corpse is not looted, it will become open for other people to loot. The question of, you know, how many servers are we planning on launching with? As of right now, we're planning on bringing up 1. We're not going to have sharding, so there is 1 server. For now, again, we're keeping it as at a 500 player capacity. I don't have a time yet. I don't have a specific time yet on server release. The in-combat state between players will disable after 10 seconds of not taking any damage in PvP. If you are grouped with someone, if you're in the same guild, you cannot attack each other. Outside of a group or guild, you can control left click to target someone defensively. After dying in PvP combat, you're going to receive a 90-second PvP immunity buff. There's really not going to be any safe places. Villages, towns, things like that, they're all going to be kind of part of that same just Wild West area. Do not expect guards to get involved at this stage anyway. We decided to not go with PvP, or I'm sorry, with experience gain or loss from PvP for now. I know somebody asked, is Herode, the druid pet, able to be targeted and killed in PvP? And the answer is no. So let's talk about scaling a little bit. On the PvP server, we have some knobs that allow us to scale how much PvP damage, how much PvP healing, and even PvP shielding. PvP damage is literally as simple as what is your target. So when you are targeting an NPC, you are doing your normal PvE damage against an NPC. If your target is a player, then the player, like the PvP scaling comes into play. For healing, it's a little different. When someone lands a heal on a player, it has to do with the highest threat that player has. So if the highest threat that a player has is an NPC, then that heal will count as a PvE heal. If the highest level threat on a player is a player, then that will count as a PvP heal. As far as how much the scaling is, I mean, I don't think it matters that we talk about it. Like right now, where we have things set is that damage in PvP is reduced by 60%, and healing is reduced by 40% in PvP. Will taunt work on players? Very curious if things will be useful or not. Not the way I want it to yet. I want to get taunt working where it works, you know, kind of the same way it does on NPCs. We don't have that functionality yet working in a PvP sense, where it literally like locks you into a specific target. I think that would be awesome. But we do have a kind of a subtle secondary use of taunt, and that is to manipulate your threat against a target to try and move their PvE or PvP scaling around. If you can raise your threat level on a target above that of an NPC, if they're engaged in PvE combat, if you can raise your threat level on that target higher than the NPC has, then you can shift their healing into PvP healing, which reduces its scaling, which gives you an edge. So there's a little bit of like some taunt threat manipulation that matters in PvP, but it's not to the degree that I would like just yet. How will feign death and down status mechanics work? Targeting, if similar to the current iteration of the down status, may need to be looked at or changed. Yeah, no plans to make any changes there, Flourishing, right now. That's something that we're just kind of let it be as it is, and players just kind of figure out how it works in the PvP context. What is the win for VR to release PvP? It seems like just another side quest with limited upside. To be succinct, it's both to acknowledge the amount of players who are currently interested in Pantheon. There were a lot of people that, you know, played Pantheon during EA that, you know, kind of set it down to take a break, saying like, hey, when you guys get PvP, I'm right back here. Like PvP is where it's at for me. It does have a long-term place in Pantheon. The plan is to never, you know, mix the two. If PvP is going to be as good as it could be in Pantheon, the primary focus has to be on PvE. And so it's also part of a long-term plan to kind of incorporate PvP into the mix so that, you know, we're able to gauge whether or not our PvE development is on track. Because again, if you've got PvP servers dying out because there's not anything worth vying over, there's not anything worth contending over, there's not, you know, a sense for a guild to finally get to a point where they can rule, and that feels worthy and worthwhile. Like those are things that we need to understand based on what's breaking down in our PvE situation. Was Brad's vision to introduce PvP before? That's a funny question. It's funny that you asked that, because some of our final, I remember the arguments that he and I had in the last couple of months of his life were related to PvP and him actually wanting to push PvP out sooner. It was something that he was getting very interested in and kind of feeling a lot of energy to try to see us push something out sooner than later. I know that Brad was not a PvPer, but he had a very healthy respect for the population of gamers that wanted to PvP.